Warning: disturbing content, viewer discretion is advised. What's the worst/most unfair thing a teacher has ever done to you or a classmate? My father died early morning on the first day back at school for the year. He had been sick a few months, and most of my summer holidays were me visiting him at the hospice. At the end of the previous school year, the school decided to change the school top. I went back to school day 2, and I was called up to the vice principal's office because I didn't have the new shirt. They knew my father had died the previous day. I was told if I didn't have the right shirt tomorrow, I would be suspended. I had to scrape together the money and get the bus to the shops to get the shirt that day because my mom was dealing with enough shit, and I didn't want to add to it. That was the day I stopped caring about school, and it was a real turning point, for the worse, in my life. I was an A student before then. I was chosen for a dance competition in school in 3rd grade. Since it was a girls' school and I was not very thin, I was playing the boy for a couple of dance numbers. After a week of practice, I was enjoying myself, and the teacher had taken money from us for costumes. And one morning I wasn't visited by my partner to call me for practice. Assuming she was absent, I requested my class teacher to let me go for practice. I'd been almost 15 minutes late, and I ran my way to the room to see some other girl dancing with my partner, and I went and apologizing to my teacher for being late. And she pulled me out of the practice room and told me they had taken someone else, and I kinda begged apology for being late. She got frustrated and told me no, they wanted someone better looking, and thrust my money into my hand. I ran and sobbed my way to my classroom, where my teacher told me to quiet down or leave class. It was one of the most painful memories of my childhood. Later I found out the teacher had replaced me with her niece, and I was a stand-in, an unaware stand-in, so that practice wouldn't be interrupted. Maybe not the worst, but 2 examples spring to mind. First up, someone threw a stone at another kid. I was pedestrian to the whole thing. Teacher literally comes storming up to me and drags me back inside. The kid who got hit by the stone didn't know who did it. The teacher forced him to point the finger at me, so I got the blame, even though I knew who did it. Also, they were confiscating yo-yos after a kid hit himself in the face while doing the trick, but a few of us found a sneaky little area where we could hide behind a wall and use our yo-yos. Not sneaky enough though. Got mine taken off me. Come and get it at the end of the day. Go to the teacher to get it back, and he says, "What yo-yo?" It was a good one too. God damn you, Mr. Whitaker of Pakefield Middle School, god damn you. In the 6th grade, I was really into art, and my older sister had just been in an art show, so I was constantly doodling. So on my first day in my 3rd period class, I had Mrs. Wagner in math skills. I was a shy, sweet girl, always trying to make my teachers happy. We all sat down, and I was in the front row. I had a beautiful picture my sister drew for me. I was showing all my teachers. Mrs. Wagner was standing in front of me. She looked over the class very seriously. Since she was in front of me, I showed her the picture telling her my sister made it for me, yada yada. She smiled and said, "That's a great picture, but we don't do art in here," she responded. Okay. Felt a little embarrassed, but whatever. I notice my pencil needs sharpening, so I go to sharpen it. As I return, class has begun, so I'm focused. Until the girl behind me let me know that my picture was missing, and Mrs. Wagner crumbled the artwork and trashed it. I was shocked and hurt. That class was very difficult. The class was always disruptive due to her strict attitude alone, and gave me a poor foundation in math. She constantly told us we wouldn't make it. Also keep in mind this was a middle school in a big poor city. So thanks, Mrs. Wagner, you insufferable bitch. A teacher, who already didn't like me at all, asked me to turn the lights off so she could play something on the projector, and she got pissed off at me for being unable to reach the lights, because I'm 4 fucking feet tall. She sighed loudly and said, "Of course, you can't even do that. Other student's name, can you do it, please?" The reason she disliked me is because I was generally unmotivated and behind class. It turns out I was very depressed at that time, verging on suicidal. Yes, I didn't finish homework, and I started skipping class, but just a year ago, I had been a highly motivated, star pupil who enjoyed class. I feel like that kind of dramatic change should set off alarm bells. It would have been nice if she asked what was wrong, rather than get angry at me all the time, especially for having dwarfism, like what the fuck lady. I told this story pretty recently, but I had a substitute in elementary that I really disliked. I was out of the classroom for some reason, can't remember why exactly, but I think it was a Cub Scout sign-up thing. I get back to the classroom, and everyone is quietly working. I asked the sub what the assignment was, and she snapped at me, saying that she wasn't going to explain it again. I asked some classmates when I sat down, and they told me we had to write about a hot day. As a 4th grader, I never really paid attention to outside temperatures, but thanks to the Sandlot, I knew that 150 degrees was hot. When it was my turn to read, the sub only let me get out my first sentence before she yelled at me in front of the class and told me that she wasn't going to listen to my paper. Like, bitch. You didn't tell me the friggin' assignment. How the hell was I supposed to know it had to be a true story? TL, Dr. Substitute Teacher refused to tell me an assignment, yelled at me when I did it wrong. It was a super sunny and hot day, and I was in class. Then I just wanted to take a quick sip on my bottle. Other teachers had no problem when it is such a heat, and it was 3 days before summer break, so nothing was really happening anymore in school, and then the teacher noticed me and came over to my place. He then said something like either you put that bottle away or you go outside the classroom and do whatever you want. 16 years/oh me just went outside the classroom and my classmates were going nuts because he probably expected me to just put my bottle away. He got super angry as I closed the door and took a seat in the hall. I just heard him complaining about me and so on. After 5 minutes or so, he came out and sent me to the principal. The principal was chill and I had no consequences. But from this day, the teacher always hated me and gave me bad grades. Because I wanted to drink something on a hot day. This one stands out in my memory for just how absurd it was. I was in 8th grade, and for reasons that I can't remember now, I was supposed to bring an empty soda can to my Earth and Space Science class. I didn't have time to get back to my locker at any point that morning, so I had to carry it with me. My school had a no food/drink in class rule, but obviously, the can was empty, and another teacher had directed me to take it to class, so it would be fine, right? Nope. I had this dickhead teacher for a class that was essentially designed to teach 14-year-olds how shitty it was to be poor. Guy was about 6 feet 10 inches and weighed maybe 150 pounds. You could push him under a door. And he was a dick. He sees the can and immediately raises his voice, points to the can, and says, "Throw it away." I start to protest since I had a reason to have it, but before I could say 2 words, he interjected, "No excuses, throw it away now." I explain that it's for my Earth and Space Sciences class, but he doesn't care and won't hear it. So I have to toss it. I get to my Earth and Space Sciences class, and when my teacher asks for it, I explain to him why I don't have it. He left the classroom, and I don't know what happened in the intervening time when he was gone, but the angry pencil didn't give me shit for the rest of the semester. Seriously, what a dick. My 2nd grade teacher was doing an arts and crafts thing for Father's Day. We had to make a paperclip out of some materials with the shape of a mouse cut out of felt. She said to start at the sides, but me being the enthusiastic idiot that I was, cut the shape from the middle. Instead of saying, "Oracle, you should have started at the side," she took everything away from me for wasting felt, and said I could not make anything. So I had to come home tell my mom we did nothing for Father's Day, which was unusual as we did something for both Mother's and Father's Day each year. She found out from some of the other parents that they had made something in class. And I confessed when confronted with it. My mother was mortified hearing how my teacher treated me. The teacher had a pick on me all year, and to this day, I still despise that woman. Instead of using my mistake as a teaching moment, she turned it into a horrible memory that I carry to this day, even though it is quite silly in the grand scheme of things. In my life, many people have wronged me, and I rarely hold a grudge, but what she did to a small 7-8-year-old boy who made a dumb mistake and how she treated me that year, will stay with me for life. In the end, it did give me a valuable lesson: never ever punish a kid for harmless mistakes, which can be used as teaching moments instead. That and some people just deserve to die lonely, miserable, and forgotten by everyone. 9th grade. In science class. Class is all working on homework silently. The teacher calls me to her desk. She knows that I want to be a video game designer. I had already made several games by 9th grade. People didn't know about everything I did. Teacher tells me that I need a good backup plan and that I probably won't be a game designer. She tells me how hard her son had to work on special effects for one of the Harry Potter movies, and that it's very unlikely that I will get very far. I just sat there, listening her tell me I won't realize my dreams, and I should do something else. I say okay. And go back to my seat to work on homework. Everyone in the class heard the conversation. Friend asks me if I'm okay when I get back to my seat. Confused more than anything. Since then, I've made several game apps for Android and have become an accomplished graphic designer. I didn't need to get hired to be a game designer because I started my own game business. Not nearly as awful as some stories here, but I remember back in 5th grade when we were getting ready for our spelling bee competition, and the 2 reps from our class had to be one guy and one girl. Our teacher was not a fan of guys for some reason, but that's an entirely different number of stories. So the girl teacher's pet is told to spell a word, gets it wrong, but the teacher said to try again. Gets it wrong another 2 times. The teacher starts slowly saying the correct letters, and the girl says them until eventually the teacher applauded and said, "Okay, you're in the finals, congrats." So my turn comes along. I don't recall the word I had to spell, but I get something like 3 letters into it and told, "Nope, next." I ask her what I got wrong since I'm sure it was right so far, but I just got yelled at and put in the hall for an hour. The teacher decides that another girl should replace the guy since we weren't up to the task apparently. When we were freshmen in high school, my best friend's dad was dying of cancer. Her mom called the school to let her teachers know what was going on, but said, "Please don't tell your classes. My daughter will tell the people that she wants to know." Then my friend's dad died. And the next day, our English teacher decided to tell the whole class why my friend was out. And he said, "We were asked not to say anything, but I can't imagine she would want to keep it a secret at this point." I was fucking livid because I knew that she still would not have wanted everyone to know. She had been pretty damn specific. So I sat there, boiling with rage. He asked to speak to me at the end of class and said, "Hey, I don't know you well enough yet to know if that was your angry face or your sad face." I told him I was just tired. Still upset with myself to this day that I didn't tell him off, but I was too timid at 14. How would you guys like one with a little added justice in there? I talked about this one before, but it's good. DL, doctor, worst thing the teaching staff at school ever did was be the cause of a nearly fatal asthma attack. So, this story takes place in the 90s in the UK, and I was one of the county's worst offending asthmatics. Every month without fail, I'd be in the hospital with an asthma attack and had some of the strongest steroids and inhalers available to a child. For those too young or clueless to remember this time, the 90s were rife with asthmatic children suffering in schools. Children died, but I was completely unaware of this, and I was very nearly one of those children. The day started out well enough but quickly deteriorated by first playtime as I recognized a particular wheeze that wasn't going away. It was one of the first signs of an impending asthma attack, so I approached a teacher and told them I needed to take my inhaler. My medications were kept in the head teacher's office because adults assumed, perhaps not unfairly, that a child should not have their possibly life-saving drugs on them in case it gets lost. The teacher told me that I wasn't sick enough to require it and to go and play. I knew the wheeze was getting worse, I could feel it. Perhaps because I was just a child, the teachers believed that I wasn't capable of understanding my own disease, which makes me laugh these days as by the age of just 5, I was an expert in self-administering my own nebulizer and steroid doses. Sad, I know. No matter what I said throughout the day to any adult that would listen, I was not taken to get my inhaler, and my asthma slowly got worse with absolutely no attention paid by any of the teaching staff. Finally, school ended, and I was picked up by my mother. Because we lived close, she elected to walk me home. I didn't manage the halfway mark before I suffered an inevitable asthma attack and promptly passed out through lack of oxygen in the middle of the street. The rest of this story was told to me secondhand and through family legend. An ambulance was called, I was rushed to the hospital to get my asthma back under control, spent a few days at the NHS's finest hospital, and eventually, my mother heard the story of how I'd ended up so ill. She hit the goddamn roof. Family legend talks about her scream lecturing the head teacher in his own office for half an hour straight about the fact I had nearly died, that all the teaching staff and himself should have been well aware of my medical condition and its severity, and his own negligence was the reason I had spent time in an oxygen tent. Legal threats were thrown around, the whole 9 yards. Which was why, after that particular event, I was regularly checked in on by the head teacher and was actively encouraged to take my medication if I wanted, and if I uttered a word about my inhaler not working as well as it should, I was unquestionably whisked home in the head teacher's personal car. When I was in 8th or 9th grade, my math teacher would go over the previous day's homework at the start of each lesson by calling out a question number, and a student's name, and that student would give the answer. One day we had about 40 short questions and on, say, the 10th one, she called on a student, D. D said she couldn't get the answer for that one. Teacher accused D of not doing her homework. D said she did the homework. Number 10 was the only one she didn't get. The teacher proceeded to ask D for the answer of number 11, 12, 13, etc. On about number 30, D said she couldn't get that one. The teacher glared at her, and accusingly said, "I thought number 10 was the only one you couldn't get?" The same teacher once excused me for accidentally doing the wrong worksheet for homework. I was an A student, while the student behind me who made the exact same mistake got demerits. She was an awful teacher,